Wir haben jetzt noch einen Beitrag und danach möchten wir Sie ganz herzlich einladen zum Empfang, zum Ausklang bei einem Getränk, um das ganze geballte Wissen, was wir heute mitbekommen haben, nochmal gemeinsam zu verarbeiten und zu reflektieren. Also ich hoffe, Sie bleiben auch nach 18 Uhr bei uns. Aber jetzt freuen wir uns sehr auf unsere Closing Keynote und sind wirklich ganz geehrt, dass die nächste Person, die die Bühne betreten wird, heute bei uns ist. Dr. Pilvi, Torsti, Staatssekretärin im Ministerium für Verkehr und Kommunikation in Finnland. Ich werde jetzt nochmal auf Englisch überswitchen, denn unsere Closing Keynote wird auch auf Englisch stattfinden. We're very excited to have our final speaker of the day with us here today, and I'm going to announce her to join me on stage now. Dr. Pilvi Torsti is the State Secretary. She's joined us here from Finland, responsible for mobility and communication. We're very honored to have her here today, so please give her a big round of applause for the closing keynote of today's conference program. Thank you so much for being with us.
So, dear friends and colleagues, I understand I'm sort of sitting or standing in between the nice evening dinner and wine and actual program of the day, so bear with me. My keynote will focus on two themes. First, the strategies and steering which we hope to achieve the goals we have really for Europe 2030 in digitalization and data policies. And secondly, I will touch upon the approaches and means to pursue sustainable, smart, digital and data-driven mobility of many solutions that we see here today. Coming all the way from Helsinki, Finland, let me start by saying that we, of course, wish to lead the way in many ways in the digital transformation, and we wish to do that by example in a concrete way. This year we've returned to the first place in the comparison of the digital economy and society index between the countries. And I know Germany is somewhere a little bit after 10, so we are happy to at least be here today. 76% of the Finnish population at the moment has at least the basic digital skills. Mobile phone is used by 99% of households and a computer or tablet by 90% of households. And 75%, that means 3 out of 4 Finns use the internet at least on weekly basis for such public authority, health or banking services for which they need bank credentials or other strong identifications. So 3/4 do that on a weekly basis. In the government that I represent, we are about to finalize what we call National Digital Compass. And I think we are doing, if not as the first, among the first ones in Europe. That will be submitted to the Finnish Parliament tomorrow by the government. The Digital Compass formulates a shared national vision and targets for digital transformation and the data economy for 2030. And this is really relevant for us all in the European Union states because the Digital Compass is the objective that the EU has set for us all, and it's part of the EU's framework for Digital Europe 2030. So there are EU-level requirements. In Finland, we have, of course, also raised the level of ambition and reflecting some of our national needs and having, therefore, national objectives. The Digital Compass in Finland comprises of 4 areas in the same way, actually, that the EU Digital Compass that was approved last summer has been built. So there are skills, digital infrastructure, digitalization of businesses, and finally digitalization of public services. And all these 4 areas, of course, needing action and investment. To illustrate, I'll give some highlights of this second area, the digital infrastructure, where we see really a considerable need for investments to fulfill important strategic targets. Firstly, the data economy is, of course, an essential part of the digital infrastructure. We hope and aim that the Finnish data economy is pioneering one in Europe and in the world by 2030, and for that, just as an example, we need EU interoperable data spaces and making public data resources accessible through interfaces. In general, we focus very much on open to everyone trust infrastructure, which of course has also been the backbone of the technological advancement also previously. But with the data economy, we also target for high level of cyber resilience for our critical infrastructure, strong international cyber industry ecosystem that has of course become very topical in the past months. And finally, thirdly, we are also moving towards very comprehensive, secure and resilient telecommunications infrastructures, as well as the computing infrastructure. Of course, again, we saw during the COVID times how important these secure and resilient infrastructures are. Well, as we all know, and in particular those that work in the public sector and in the governments, digitalization really touches every sector. And in many countries, I think also including Germany last year before the elections, there are considerations and questions whether there should be a minister or ministry for digitalization in particular. In Finland, we have developed for the time being something we call the Finnish solution for this. So to steer all the transformation, digital transformation, we've established a digital transformation ministerial working group, and that group, with several ministers, key ministers on board, guides and directs the development of all ministries in matters related to digital public administration, digital transformation, data economy, and information policy, as well as cybersecurity. So no sort of lonely single minister, but a group of ministers together with also, therefore, of course, more power. And to further improve this interministerial cooperation, we have also brought it into the public's servant level, so there is an administrative coordination group that we called Digital Office, which has representatives from various ministers. And it's a really high-level body that coordinates the cooperation between the ministries, but very importantly also serves as one contact point for correspondence with citizens and stakeholders, including companies. So companies don't need to know which ministry they should actually contact, but they can contact the one office. In addition to this digital compass, national digitalization development will be steered and implemented with the help of a very concrete digital portfolio of projects and tasks. The digital portfolio is a monitoring tool really, and will cover most significant digitalization projects of the central government in Finland. So we have now set the sort of strategic level target with the digital compass, and next step of course needs to be implementation and action plan that are currently being drafted. And I would just give you some examples of the actions. Firstly, and if there are representatives from the public sector, this is perhaps somewhat relevant to you, we have thought how we could make the life of people sort of just smoother, in particular when they have important life events, such as having a child or retiring. Public services should be closely linked to these events and taken into account from the perspective of people, businesses and communities. And for that, we have now decided to define and digitalize approximately 40 key events of people's, or most impactful events of their lives, and to do that in the coming 5 to 8 years. And the goal really being to make life easier. Another example of the portfolio project is the real-time digital economy for businesses. This means that all business transactions are based on the digital structured and machine-readable information and processing. If you are thinking what could be an example, so at the moment, for instance, our taxation office, the tax office on the state level has more or less digitalized all its services, and they are pretty much real-time, both for citizens and for companies. And of course, when the company's business data is processed automatically, they save money and time. Companies also can then control their own data and use it more effectively to develop their own businesses. What I would like to stress is that the work on something like digital compass of a country or EU, of course, does not only stem from project, but it also stems from values, which I think we have understood even more better in the past year than before. In Finland, we have stated our vision as follows. In 2030, Finland will be a digitally capable welfare state built on reliably operating and secure infrastructure, digital competence, and entrepreneurship that utilizes modern digital technology. So that by 2030. And this we hope deliver by building on the values such as trust, digital security, participation, renewal, sustainability, and human centricity. And we are, of course, very fully aware as a small state there in the north that this can't flourish without a very close alignment with our European partners and the European digital strategies, regulations, and partnerships with those who have common mindset. So we very much hope that our practical example with our digital compass, as well as the operative arm of the government, the digital office, can work as an inspiration and motivation also to other countries in building better Europe through the digital transformation. So far, we felt that the national cooperation has been very, very fruitful in the level of EU, and we certainly cooperate a lot, for instance, with Germany. It took us about 1 year to put together what I just described as a government, both the ministerial and civil servant structures and policies and strategies. That way we allocated gaps, developed new areas for targets and cooperation, and streamlined our vision. And this we did not as a sort of government only, but by engaging close to 1,000 participants that were in the collaboration events, workshops, and gave comments. So the actual work really has been done together, and also, of course, through shared digital spaces. As we have experienced, I would stress this in particular in the context of public sector, perhaps the biggest innovation so far of our national digital compass is the way we have transformed the way we cooperate. The implementation work that has already started through the government because of the common understanding and commitment created through the process. So as often is the case, process itself is a key element to achieve goals, and good process is half of the successful implementation. So we very much encourage in this digitalization projects and processes for good processes and learning from others. Dear friends, the government actions, of course, only cover half of the story. We must enable the flourishing of our businesses and public entities, such as municipalities, to take their leap in digital ladders. Many of those leaps we, of course, saw during the COVID years. Therefore, parallel to the strategic level that the digital compass provides, we must create regulatory framework to serve our societies and citizens. At the moment, we feel we are faced with regulatory tsunami for data from the side of the EU. Large, globally trend-setting regulations are either about or to enter into force or are being completed. Just like the GDPR in its time, these data rules regarding the transparency, content, and sharing of data extend their power outside the EU as well. We can have so-called Brussels effect. The creating common EU regulations is, of course, better than 27 country-specific codes. However, we think we must carefully assess the existing and anticipated regulation, the so-called Big Five, as a whole to ensure consistency and compatibility with other current and future acts when we are now finalizing these acts, and we are having these discussions a lot with the German government too. We believe that legal certainty, common applications of the rules, and seamless administrative practices incentivizes innovation and investments for the uptake of new technologies and services in the market. And this calls for predictable, clear, stable, and technology-neutral regulative framework for shaping markets and value chains. And that way we can finally have that mentioned Brussels effect with data and digitalization policies, and therefore also global impact. So, dear friends, as said in the beginning, I'll touch upon two issues. So I have talked about the overall horizontal layer, strategies and steering that needs to be in place in digital transformation. I will now move also a little bit to one vertical second theme, which is the mobility sector. and touch upon some approaches and means to pursue sustainable, smart, digital and data-driven mobility. It's also in mobility that we need holistic approach and systemic change. If we wish to utilize the benefits from the digital transition at large and to promote well-being, long-term competitiveness and climate sustainability across the whole European Union. I approach this with multimodal digital mobility services, vehicle data and digitalization of logistics. The digital multimodal mobility services should be seen as a separate layer from traditional mobility markets, creating added value digital services to users and new business opportunities for service providers. It is the layer that acts as a glue to create bridges over the siloed and fragmented service offering we now face. So operators, both public and private, offering digital mobility services should be enabled and empowered to act in this role, to become this glue, and in this role be treated as equal market players. If switching trains or modes of transport has been usually difficult within and between European cities and countries for years, why not give someone else a try to make that easier through digital means? I at least personally also would not mind if a mobility app was available in Finnish language for me, not to speak about my parents or in-laws. There is a need to support this development by regulative actions to release all the potential digitalization and data has to bring to mobility services. However, we all as users of mobility services have already been able to take advantage from digital services available. Accurate route planners and real-time information on vehicles guarantees that you know if the bus you are waiting is coming at all, or at least on time or not on time. Applications give information on available services, for example, shared cars available next to your house. Booking and paying is made easy, and you can even travel public transport just using your credit card. So we already have the tools as data and digital services enable to further create new and more efficient ways, and thus limit the needed public funding. For example, digital wallets could be used for purchasing subsidized tickets through third-party digital channels without worries of these subsidies going into wrong hands, as we all handling with public money and budget are very worried about. Operators should of course be able to offer more personalized digital mobility services to meet users' demands. So we need to boost innovations to further develop mobility services to really offer real choices. I can use my own family of 5 members actually as an example of such change. We became more active consumers of digital multimodal mobility services since 2020, 2 years ago, when we gave up owning our personal car. So now our family's daily life moves around using various applications that enable using car share services, city bikes, and of course public transport. However, there would be still room for improvement, especially when planning long-distance journeys, when you would like to have all services in one application. But I can say that after these 2 years, no one in the family misses the trouble of having one's own car. Dear friends, it's of course clear we need European-wide regulatory framework for these digital services. We see it's crucial that legislative framework promoting sustainable digital mobility services should be based on human-centric approach, create fair operating environment for all operators, and promote a competitive and innovative market. We also think that digitalization could deliver us more. That's because there are 2 major changes taking place also in the vehicle market that could help us to transform our mobility landscape further. First change is the value chain that the electric cars bring about. They require different kind of maintenance, and the transition to intelligence and automatic transport increases their share of turnover. The second change we see is the shift from manufacturer-led value chains to multilateral operational models as IT and data players and services increase their direct and competing interaction with the consumer. This is again what I see in the daily life of my family. These changes mean that also vehicles actually become platforms of services and solutions towards carbon neutrality, one of the requirements of our time. In our view, and ambitious policies towards data sharing are best means towards innovation and digitalization. Also, vehicle data calls for interoperable, decentralized data exchange solutions. Citizens' perspective is best met by empowering individuals to control and reuse data related to them across systems and service providers. So it's for these reasons that Finland really welcomes the EU Commission's upcoming Mobility Data Act. To serve our cities and societies towards carbon-neutral mobility, we must also increase the efficiency and digitalization of logistics. And it is in the digitalization of logistics, that we have also chosen to be one of the Finnish government's priorities. Last year, the Ministry of Transport and Communication brought up a government program on digitalization of logistics, which aims to strengthen the digital development in the logistics sector. The target is that logistics will be efficient, green and smart. And also in logistics, the key means is the enhanced and seamless data sharing. So, dear friends, with the EU regulation, the whole Europe is now moving towards paperless transportation by 2025, and that's 3 years from now. This is a huge investment and possibility to modernize our data capabilities. So finally, as I already stated regarding our national digital compass, I ended my speech by underlining that all I have said is actually possible if we just practice extensive cooperation at all levels, from cities to state governance, to achieve human-centric, smart, digital and data-driven mobility for Europe. I think this optimism was also shared in the previous panel, although there the issue was space. So in many ways we have the technologies, but there we have to find the ways to move forward. And the Smart Country Convention, of course, is an excellent example of a forum where we can promote this kind of cooperation required. I thought I will actually end with a quotation that I found in a book that I recommend to all that are somehow working related to cities. And this book is called Happy City, written by Charles Montgomery. And he is actually citing Aristotle in the book. And the quotation goes, "Whatever creates or increases happiness, or some part of happiness, we ought to do. Whatever destroys or hampers happiness or gives rise to opposite, we ought not to do." All the best for all your works. Thank you.